Good morning, Chiefs Kingdom. Matt Derrick with Chiefs Digest here. Getting to catch up with you this morning about Chiefs Inactives against Jacksonville Jaguars. I will not be in Jacksonville today, so I will be watching from home in Kansas City along with all of you, but following the action here in the home office. And wanted to break down and answer any questions this morning that you have about the Chiefs and the Inactives against Jaguars today. A little bit of a surprise. You can see up on the screen what the Inactives are today. LaMichael Piron was elevated from the practice squad on Saturday. He will not play today. He was activated just in case they needed him in place of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who had been dealing with an illness during the week, missed practice on Wednesday and Friday. But Clyde looks like will be ready to go, so he is expected to play today, and Piron will be down. No surprise with Lucas Niang and Wanye Morris. Those are the two tackles at the bottom of the roster right now. Mike Caliendo, Nick Allegretti will be your backups on the interior. And Prince Tego Winogo has pretty much nailed down that swing tackle position. So if anything happens on the edges, that's the guy who's going to be coming in. Defensive end B.J. Thompson, defensive tackle Neil Farrell, both inactive today as they were last week. Keandre Coburn is the next name, and that's the name that gets bumped down to the inactive list with the return of Chris Jones. A little surprised there. There might have been some other choices the Chiefs could have gone, especially since they will be carrying 6 linebackers and 7 wide receivers again today. So no changes there. But Coburn, I think, has looked pretty good and would like to see more of him. But with the return of Chris Jones, they feel like and they elevated Matt Dickerson from the practice squad as well, who played a lot last week. I would expect Dickerson to play a little bit less, Jones to play a bit more. But I kind of still want to see more from Coburn, so I'm a bit surprised that he's on the inactive list. And the last one, Nick Jones, still dealing with that hand injury. Would expect to see him back in some time. I mean, he has been practicing. He's been a full go in practice, so that hand is not really holding him back at this point. But the Chiefs are still obviously giving him a little bit more time to recover. What this inactive list does mean, of course, is that you will see Travis Kelce. You will see Chris Jones today. They will be playing. So you will definitely see them in action. The question is going to be how much. And I wouldn't necessarily expect Travis's workload to change all that much. He was limited in practice during the week, so it wasn't a full go, but looked comfortable. I mean, in the portion open to the media this week, we got to see him dance. I mean, he was going through the usual stretch. So not terribly surprised that, he is going to go this week. It certainly seemed that was the indication all week long, was that he was going to be ready, barring a setback. But it's, we'll see how much he is able to go. I think he should be close to a full workload, though. So if he got 85% of the snaps, it wouldn't surprise me at all. With Chris, I think it's more of a question mark, especially considering where they are playing in Jacksonville. It's going to be, I think, about 87 degrees today. Pretty high humidity, as you can expect in Jacksonville. The feels like temperature is going to be well into the mid to upper 90s. And this is conditions and weather where we've seen it before. A lot of players in September, especially visiting players going down there, can cramp up, have some challenges. I'm sure the Chiefs have been, watching their hydration levels this week, and the trainers have been watching the players pretty closely to make sure that they are hydrated. But they'll be ready to deal with it. But a good comparison, and I was talking with Jason Anderson from Sports Radio 810 earlier this week about it. Remember, Aaron Donald, went through a holdout in 2017 and missed all of training camp, didn't play week 1, and came back in week 2. He played a lot in week 2. I think it was 48 snaps, which I think was close to 80% of the snaps for the team that day. Wasn't a big defensive workload, but he played 48 snaps. But that was in Los Angeles in 74 degrees, perfect Chamber of Commerce day weather. That's not what the Chiefs will be in Jacksonville. So, could Chris Jones play 48 snaps? I think Chris is healthy enough to do it. Whether he's ready to do it, to be in football shape, getting hits, taking that kind of thing, that we will see. I might be a little surprised if Chris was able to have that kind of workload. He should start, however. I would expect him to be out there next to Derek Nottie as one of the starters on the defensive line. So he should be out there from the very beginning, unless there's a coaching change or there's anything that Steve Spagnuolo wants to do differently. But I expect Chris to be out there from the very beginning and probably in rotation. We will see how much of a workload he gets, but I would think that they would give him a little bit of time. Anybody has any questions, feel free to fire away. I'm glad to answer your questions this morning about the team and what's going on and what you might be able to expect today. Um, you know, Looking at the inactives and going back to them again with P. Ryan, it's not unusual for the Chiefs to elevate a practice squad player and then not activate them. It's happened plenty of times before, usually in a lot of similar situations to this, where you've got a player like Clyde Edwards-Helaire who may be questionable, and they're not certain that he's going to be able to go the next day. So on Saturday they bring up a backup. It does burn one of his elevations. You're able to get three of those, two essentially for free, and after the third one, you either have to keep the player on the practice squad or on the active roster or waive them to be able to bring them back. That's the case with Matt Dickerson now, who's now been elevated twice. If the Chiefs want to elevate him a third time, they would have to keep him on the 53 or waive him in order to get him back onto the practice squad. So a little bit of a dilemma there going forward, but at the same time, with Chris Jones coming back and and you would think starting next week being closer and closer to a full go, especially being able to then maybe bring back Coburn in the place of Dickerson next week, you might not have to elevate Matt Dickerson for a while. So that would at least give him an option to keep him back down the practice squad, save that third elevation for a little while. Also getting the Jacksonville Jaguars inactives today, just seeing them come across and looking to see if there's any big names that are going to be on there. They only have 4 names. It's wide receiver Parker Washington, Elijah Cooks, running back JaMychal Hasty, and safety Antonio Johnson. So none of the problems, especially the Jaguars were dealing with some injuries on their offensive line. Those guys will play, but I think that's a pretty key to this game. The Jaguars offensive line right now is not as good as it was at the end of last season when they were playing as well as they did. And that's going to be, to me, a key for this game. The Chiefs, if they can keep Jacksonville from establishing any kind of a run game, and I think they did a pretty good job against that last week against Detroit, who has, frankly, a much better offensive line than the Jaguars do right now. If they can keep that running game intact and keep Travis Etienne from getting into a rhythm and getting some yards, it really makes the Jaguars offense a little bit more one-dimensional. They do use a lot of play action to help out Trevor Lawrence. And we saw last week there have been some holes in the Chiefs secondary with play action. It wasn't a big deal. I mean, they did a pretty good job against Detroit last week. But there were times when Jared Goff found some soft spots in the zone off the play action. And if Trevor Lawrence gets into the same kind of, set today, that could happen again. But once again, a key to that is going to be Etienne having a good day. And if he's able to run the ball effectively and get some things going, that allows the Jaguars to do some things with Lawrence in the play action game and open things up a little bit. But if you're able to stuff the run game and really put the ball into the hands of Trevor Lawrence, I like the Chiefs' chances today. I think that's got to be their game plan. Certainly, you saw last week, Calvin Ridley is a dangerous weapon for any team, and now being on the Jaguars, he can beat you anytime. You have to be concerned about that guy. But I think that especially with the return of Chris Jones, that should certainly help out a little bit in the pass rush, which was, at times last week, the only time the Chiefs were really getting a lot of pressure at times was really when they were bringing extra blitzers. They blitzed Jared Goff about 40 times last week, or 40% of the time last week. Let's see if they're going to keep that up again. I'd be surprised if they did. I think that this week they'll probably play it a little bit more straight up. I'm sure you'll still see some exotic blitzing from Steve Spagnuolo. That's what he does. Over on the other side of the ball, with the return of Travis Kelce, how much do I expect the Chiefs offense is going to change? Probably a little bit. I mean, certainly against the Lions with Kelce out, you saw a little bit less reliance on tight end design plays. I think you'll still see plenty of tight end action. I mean, the Chiefs will do their 12 and 13 personnel with 2 and 3 tight ends on the field at times. That will still be something that they do. But with Kelce, there's certainly going to be more plays designed specifically for the tight end and specifically for Kelce. And that's something we really didn't see a lot last week. Noah Gray in that essentially Travis Kelce role only had 3 receptions. A healthy Travis Kelce has a bigger workload than that. So, we'll see how the Jaguars attack him and how that opens up things for some other players on the field. I'm also going to be intrigued to see how Andy Reid and Matt Nagy end up using Kadarius Toney. I mean, I would expect them to do what they usually do when a guy has a tough outing, like they did last week. They kept giving him the ball. I would expect the ball to go to Kadarius Toney pretty early in this game. If there's going to be something specifically designed to get the ball to him, whether it be something in space, close to the line of scrimmage, I think they're going to want to try and get the ball in his hands, get him a catch, get that confidence back, and get him in rhythm. I mean, that is classic Andy Reid, to make sure you just go back to a guy and give him a chance to bounce back and make a play. So I'm very interested to see that. I think that there's a strong possibility that you're going to see Kadarius Toney really worked into this game pretty quickly, if not for one or two balls, something in the first quarter to try and get him and get his rhythm going. Because, as I've talked about, if you've listened to any of my other discussions with Locked On Chiefs or A10, really right now, with this 7 receiver group, the Chiefs have Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Sky Moore, who are their top 2 guys. They want Kadarius Toney to be in that trio. They want him to be one of their top 3 guys, who's a starter, who's out there most of the time, and is a part of every package. Right now, with the injury, they are still slow rolling him. They're bringing him back a little bit more slowly, so you're not going to see him as much. But they want him to be that third guy. So they're going to try and want to get his confidence up as quickly as possible. Justin Watson's going to be the guy who plays when somebody's hurt, or they need somebody in a specific role. I mean, he's the backup. He's the jack of all trades. Who's going to play in a little bit of everything. Richie James is right kind of in that category too. I mean, James is going to have a lot of things designed specifically for him. He's going to rotate in. But he also kind of fits into that third group with Rashee Rice and with Justin Ross, in that their usage is going to depend week to week. It's really going to be which week, that there's specifically some packages in there for those guys, and taking advantage of different things that they see on the other side of the ball. So you're going to see some situations like you saw last week, where maybe it's one or the other of those guys. Maybe Rice gets a lot more looks than Ross. You might see it the other way some weeks. Maybe it's Ross that's going to get a lot more looks than Rice. But right now, they're both rotational pieces. They're going to be in there when there's specific packages designed for them, rather than just being somebody who's out there on a every down basis. I mean, it's other guys who are going to be getting those reps. So, to a degree, all of those guys fit into a category. I would say Toney, Rice, and Ross all fit into a category where if they're on the field right now, there may be like a 50% chance that the play is designed to go to them. And, that can be a little worrisome. That can tip your hand a little bit, and the Chiefs have done that a little bit in the run game as well, when, depending on who's in the backfield, can tell you where the ball is going to go. We'll see. The other thing, as far as tipping your hand, kind of reminds me, it leads us into talking about Jawaan Taylor. That's the other thing we're going to watch today, is to see how Jawaan lines up. This obviously has been the topic of the week around the NFL, about Jawaan Taylor, and a lot of other tackles around the league too, who line up in maybe borderline legal positions on the line of scrimmage. I'm not gonna beef on Jawaan Taylor about his jump, because I tell you what, if you slow it down, you'll be hard pressed to find a snap where Jawaan Taylor is leaving before that ball twitches in the hands of Creed Humphrey. That is he's got one of the best jumps in the league when it comes to knowing his quarterback's cadence and getting off the ball. And I've talked to him about it. I mean, he works very hard on that. And the coaches have told us, how hard he works at that. That's a skill. I mean, that's something that you have to pick up, and not everybody has it. Jawaan Taylor does. And so that's why I mean, he will tell you when he has a legitimate false start. He had one last week where he was off on his count in the fourth quarter. That was a ready one, and that one absolutely went up on the film. I mean, the coach just told him this week he shot. He knew it. He knew it at the time that that was legit. The bigger question, though, is where he lines up. And there are 2 issues with that. I mean, one specifically, obviously, is that by the rule, you're supposed to be at the mid-center of the center. I mean, some say it's lined up with his hips. Some will say the belt, but you basically got to be lined up midway with the center. And Jawaan has a tendency to get a little bit further back. I mean, his right foot will get further and further into the backfield, and he saw it on film this week. He absolutely did. He knew what people were talking about. He'll also tell you, and I agree with him. I mean, a lot of guys are on the lead sheet. They do get that, a few extra inches there off the line to give them a head start on some of these edge rushers. And Andy Reid said, hey, you're going to take every inch you can that the officials will give you to get a head start on those guys. But the NFL said they're going to crack down on it this week, that there is going to be more attention given to where the tackles are lining up. That should be across the league and not just on Jawan Taylor. We'll see how that gets enforced, but Jawan knows that he's going to be watched very, very closely this week. So I'm going to be interested to see just exactly how he does line up. We'll see what the Chiefs got today. My prediction for this game, 27-24 Chiefs. I do think that they are the better team on both sides of the football. This is going to be a tough one. Jaguars are certainly one of those teams that can be in the conversation for the AFC playoffs, for the AFC contenders. You have to put them in there after their season last year. I'm still not 100% sure that they're ready, but this is a good team. But I'm expecting the Chiefs to come back. I'm expecting them to be more focused. We will see what we get out of Chris Jones and Travis Kelce today. I think that both those guys should be ready. We'll just see what their workloads will be. But I certainly don't expect the Chiefs to have the drops that they had last week. I mean, that was an absolute focus this week for this team, was to get in on that. Andy really got onto the guys. And my sense was in both love them up and break them down way. That part of it was just to encourage them, saying, hey, you guys aren't those kind of guys. You're not going to be making those drops. You're not going to be making those mistakes. But then at the same time, working on the little things. I mean, they were definitely doing ball drills with footballs, tennis balls, everything that we saw in practice this week. So, was ball security and really focusing on making the catch. So, he's stressing that this week, and we'll see how they bounce back. So, I'll be a couple places after the game. You can catch me on the Locked On Chiefs podcast. After the game, a little bit after, I'll also be on the Sports Radio 810 post-game show with Josh Briscoe. And also later tonight, I will be joining my good friend and my podcast co-host, Nick Jacobs, on our brand new podcast, 41 is the Mic. You can find this wherever you get your podcast, but look for 41 is the Mic with myself and Nick Jacobs, and we'll be breaking down all the action every single week post-game. Because of our schedules, it will be a couple hours after the game. So maybe a couple hours after the game, or even your first listen Monday morning, you'll be able to hear Nick and I breaking down. And really looking forward to it. We had fun doing our first podcast last week, and Nick knows more ball than I do. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We've known each other for a long time. I think it comes across in the podcast that we have fun and enjoy talking about the Chiefs. So enjoy the game, everybody, and we will see you. I'll see you wherever you tune in after the game. Thanks a lot. Have a great day, everybody.